I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call vote. All right, excuse me, roll call.
Gary?
Here. Push the middle button.
Here we go. Gehrig?
Here.
Grinberg?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Well, it's an interesting evening. It appears that we're cresting somewhere around 35 feet, and it'll probably be 35 with something on top of it because it hasn't quit going up. But that's fantastic news. And then we heard today that Judge Thunheim made a ruling today that has been favorable to the project, so we're very excited about that. We'll have to digest that ruling a little bit, and I think that we'll be putting something out in the next 24 hours about that, but that was very good. That maybe he did it because we're cresting, good time to do it. But the inspections department is hosting an open house along with the Home Builders Association from 3 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 11th. This open house will provide citizens and contractors the opportunity to talk to inspectors and code changes with the inspectors, see new City Hall, and get a look at the new software, which will ease the plan review, permitting, and inspection process and provide for online interactive system. This will be a great time to stop by and learn more about the new software as the changes of the 2018 code set as well. So we're very excited about this. This will be a good change for everybody and probably will speed up the process, right, Bruce? Very interactive, good. This is the National Library Week, and this year's theme is Libraries Equal Strong Communities. Libraries of all types participate and celebrate on how libraries are places that strengthen communities with free access to education, lifelong learning, discovery, and entertainment. Solid waste. The City of Fargo teamed up recently with Clay County to host a plastic bag recycling challenge amongst the fifth graders in Fargo, West Fargo, and Moorhead. Students were encouraged to bring in extra plastic bags from home to be recycled. Containers were placed at each participating school and challenge ran for 2 months. During that time, approximately 53,500 plastic bags were collected to be recycled in Makota Recycling. The winning school will receive a bench from their school made of recycled materials. To that quest of bags there, John. Finally, Fargo has earned the Greenest City Award for the state of North Dakota from Insurify, on-site site that compares, sells, and manages auto insurance coverage. This award is given to the city in each state with the most environmentally conscious living and driving practices. Award recipients were evaluated on driver behavior, vehicle features, urban sprawl, park space, air quality, and renewable electric programs to determine the highest scoring community for each state. So it's a different way of getting the Greenest City Award, but we got it. So. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 25th, 2019 regular meeting and the April 3rd, 2019 special meeting?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 25?
So moved. Second.
Strand and Gehrig, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 26, the regular agenda, State Water Commission requests cost reimbursement for FM flood diversion projects. There's an A and a B, and Ken Costin to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Item A is for $229,746. That represents costs incurred for the Oxbow Ring Levee project. Item B is a total of $558,592. That is for construction costs on the 2nd Street and Main Avenue City run project. So with that, we'd ask for your approval so we can submit these cost reimbursement requests. I did want to report, you've been seeing these on the agenda for many months and maybe even a couple of years at least. Moving forward with the State Water Commission money, there's a potential that they may be approved by the Diversion Authority as an expeditious way of taking care of this because there's representation of all these entities. Right now, the Finance Department has to route these requests to the Cass County Board, to the Water Resource District, and to yours, and it creates quite a delay in processing our payment requests. So we've ask the State Water Commission to consider a different form of approval process. So I just want to give you a heads up that if you start seeing or not seeing them on your agenda, that would be the explanation.
Is there a motion?
Move 26A for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Is there a motion for 26B?
Likewise, move 26B.
A second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Garrick.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 27, an automatic aid agreement with West Fargo Fire Department. Steve Dirksen, Chief, to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. In front of you tonight is a automatic aid agreement. As far as I know, I think this is the first automatic aid agreement in the state of North Dakota between two fire departments, where two fire departments would agree to respond into each other's territories as a first due alarm assignment. Chief Fuller is in the room tonight from West Fargo. He and I met earlier this spring, end of the winter, to discuss some of the construction projects. We both had concerns in our communities about how we're going to respond to areas as we had different projects. Ours was on 52nd Avenue South. Theirs is with the Cheyenne Drive construction project there in West Fargo. So we talked about how we could do that and help each other out. And we've come up with a map here that looks, basically we would have West Fargo responding first due in the Deer Creek edition. That would be the yellow area on the bottom there. And then we would be the first due unit in the West Fargo community that would be represented in the green. We would do this through October 31st while the projects are being completed, just because of things that can happen during the construction process that would delay an emergency response. We've determined that we can each respond into each other's communities quicker than we could do it ourselves. So this is a great opportunity that we can work together and help each other neighboring communities out, and I ask for your approval.
Any questions by the commission? Tony, you okay with this?
Yep, I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Garrick.
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now we have a little time. Maybe Jeremy Gordon, you could explain to us the 64th Avenue South Bridge construction project? It's nice. Somebody gets your computer slides all ready for you.
That's right. Good evening. First time in this new place. Kind of fancy. So, in the transportation world, we've been working hard on 64th Avenue on the south edge of town. So this is an update for you, and there's a contract amendment from the consulting firm. So I'll give you the details of what we've looked at so far for the street section, look at the amendment, and then answer any questions you may have. So this is a sheet from the environmental document. The pink line is 64th Avenue, 2 miles. South edge of town on the east side and beyond the south edge of town on the west side. This is a screenshot from our 4-year federal aid project map. The lighter purple, magenta lines are construction projects underway this year. The red would be hopefully projects next year, yellow the year after, and then the dark purple is future unidentified. So this project, what has been included in the current long-range plan, the 2014 long-range plan, it started out as just a bridge. That's the first red box, and that was going to go frontage road to frontage road. And the second boxes circled are the east portion up to the interstate and the west portion to 45th Street. So the project's actually a pretty straightforward project. It's going to be a 3-lane road for now. Will be expandable to the future if need be, but traffic volumes don't warrant more than a 3-lane road for quite a while. So there's 3 different alternatives. You guys won't be voting on these tonight. We'll come back in a month to have you guys select which ones you like. But to date, we've got just a 3-lane road with a bike trail on one side, sidewalk on the other, very similar to 40th Avenue South. The middle option would be 3 lanes with bike lanes, with a path and a sidewalk. That's what we built on 25th Street going to Davies, minus the roundabouts. And then the last one is a new alternative that we really haven't built in town. It'd be a 3-lane road, and you'd have a path and a sidewalk and then a cycle track. So it's really a bonus shared use path just for bicycles. So the estimated construction on each one of these is 25 million for the basic section, 27 million for the one with the bike lanes, and then 26.4 for the one with the cycle track. So you may ask, what is a cycle track? So the problem we've always had when we've got shared use paths crossing at intersections is that they kind of get treated like they're second-class citizens. They're not up in the street, so the cars think they have the right of way. So the green portion would be the cycles only. So we'd pull them from the boulevard basically into the street, and cars would have to yield to them as they're going to and fro. So the proposed construction phasing, we want to start at 25th Street, work west. So at the end of next year, we'd have a brand new road from 25th Street to Maple Valley, and then we'd have at least the dirt work for the bridge, because we got to let things settle here in the valley. Give it some time so it can settle out. In the second year of construction, we would finish up the bridge and the west portion over to 45th Street. So like I mentioned, the alternatives will come to PUPEC, Public Works Committee, within a month. We'll ask you guys to pick an alternative, and then we'll be going gangbusters on the final design. So the plans are due in November, bidding it next February, construction to start in a year, and construction to wrap up after 18 months of time. So KLJ is the consulting on this project. We hired them in 2015 when we hired consultants for a couple other projects. So we originally hired them for the red portion, basically frontage road to frontage road. We were going to have them do the environmental paperwork because there's federal aid between the frontage roads. And then this included, at a time when we were going to close off the south side for flood control purposes, we were going to raise the grade of the interstate here and put a levee through the DOT right away. The original value of that contract was a little less than $600,000. So their project, the project that we originally hired them to do, was supposed to take 3 years. Year 1 would be the median crossovers on the interstate. Year 2 would be the flood control within the interstate and the embankment for the bridge. And year 3 would have been the road. And since 2015, 2016, their scope has really changed. Their flood control project was removed. We put them on hold for a year because we didn't need them to start working just for the road portion of the project. And then we swapped construction years. 52nd Avenue was moved up, 64th Avenue was moved down. And then we extended the project limits at least double for them. So now it's a 2-mile road section, which doesn't seem like a lot, but you go stand out there and it's a long ways for an urban arterial roadway. So like I said, it's set to bid next winter. So the scope and fee for this contract amendment is $1.4 million. And with the construction cost slated to be $25 to $27 million, this comes in pretty much in line with what standard engineering is. And then the funding source for their contract will be infrastructure sales tax, utility funds, and special assessments. The federal aid does not go to the consulting firm. It could, but we always plug it in just to construction because it's not even enough for construction. So there's the recommended motion, and their contract will be a value at just less than $2 million. So I can answer any questions.
Question to commissioners?
John, go first.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. Jeremy, how many RFP responses were there originally?
This was at a time when we did the 32nd Avenue design, the reconstruction project that we had 2 years ago. And then we also were looking at a grade raise at Drain 27 by Fleet Farm. I think we usually get around 5 or 6. On this project, there were 2 that were teamed up, KLJ and Apex.
So in a situation like this where there's such a really dramatic change in the scope of the project, how does that affect the other bidders who had interest in the project, but then it changed after the fact?
Yeah, that's the dilemma we face. Usually we hire them on the project in front of them, and most projects don't turn like this one has so drastically. It's really just based on their merit originally. So we at this point, they have the understanding of the project and they're doing the work for the full 2 miles. Even if we were to go with a different firm, I think the costs would be pretty comparable.
And they've already done some work, Jeremy. It's not
They had,
that
I mean,
it's-
they haven't done the work that they're asking for, but they're at the end of that $585,000 contract. So, I mean, the final design, I mean, there's upwards of 30, 40 people working on that to get it completed. I mean, this is a big plan set and there's a lot of moving parts. So I'm always kind of surprised by how many people in a consulting firm touches a project, but it's a lot of people. So just for comparison's sake, 52nd Avenue this year, that's 1.5 miles. The engineering fees on that are right around 1.3, and that's a $20 million project. So it's a lot of money, but it is in line with what we pay for our projects.
Commissioner Grinberg.
Jeremy, appreciate your thoughts on kind of describing the effort and the discussion that has taken place to date on 64th, on the notion of an interchange being on 64th, not just an overpass. So I'd like to get your perspective on how much effort was actually put into that, recognizing that, that's I think a 2-mile kind of policy that DOT has, and we're within that. And then second, do we have any ideas what an interchange would add to the cost?
Well, the first question is, the DOT, the first thing you have to do to get an interchange is to really show a need for you to have it. So the federal highway, they like to be stingy with their access points. So you have to prove to them that you need it, that you can't do anything else within your city.
So then if I may
Yeah.
interject, how much discussion with planning and with what is being discussed with various developments, et cetera, was taken into account with that need? Because what I understand, what could come is quite a high need for that area. It's anecdotal. It's nothing has been formalized yet, but it seems to me that there will be need there someday. And I think the often frustrating thing that we have is we come in and we do a project, and then 5 years later we go back and change it. And so I just want to make sure that we've actually thought through that need and then made that request or consideration, so that if it's an additional, I don't know what an interchange adds to the cost, but I think we should have that at least as part of our discussion.
Okay. So there is an interstate access request that a consultant has to fill out, and I think there's 8 bullet points that you have to satisfy to justify an interstate access. So we could have KLJ just take a cursory review of that and see if we're anywhere even close. But to answer the question about cost, the 52nd Avenue project that we did already over 10 years ago, that was $40 million from 52nd Avenue to 45th Street. I would say it would add probably 20 million on top of this one.
If we have 25 million for an overpass, and you just said an interchange and a 1/2 mile of pavement is 40 million, and you've got 25 million, how do you,
You get up to 45 million.
$20 million for?
To add ramps and intersections and lighting and interstate work.
I don't believe that number, but anyway, I think we need to take some time and have a better options and present these options, so that we're not, whoever's sitting here 5, 6, 7 years from now, when the demand is there, that we have to come back and have another revisit of this. And it's just,
Okay.
I think the concern is we're a north-south city and we need to have crossing east-west, and to your point, emergency vehicles or people that have to get over there. Do you need one every mile? So it may be a different need we have in our community than other places. And I can see, in the cities, you'll see that. You'll see quite a few interchanges, and then you won't see a lot for a while. But might as well ask the question before we do that and figure it out. But you also give us the pricing too, so we know what the pricing is, if it's 45 million, so.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Jeremy, I'm not meaning to belabor it, but I get cautious when it's bids and RFPs and process, and I'm just curious, going back when this was originally awarded at $585,000 or thereabouts, how close were the other bidders? And I guess my question is this: how likely or not is it that they're out there going, well, we could have done this project and its expanded scope, and we should have had a chance to compete for it? That's where I'm wrestling with this right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall. The prices were, so we wanted a price for the engineering, and then we had a different price for construction, and that was left out. They all really end up falling pretty close in line. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I can get those and provide those to you.
Can I step?
Yeah.
When we do RFPs, one of the things is, one of the lowest scoring parts of an RFP is their cost. The cost is important, but the consultant and who gets that project is even more important, and also the history they have with us. And so through the RFP process, we do have the cost in there, their estimated cost, but it's always, as we're scoring, it's got a lower scoring amount than their history that consultant has with the city and our experience with them.
So at that time, did anybody anticipate this expansion of scope?
No, so I guess I could step back. So when we hired them just to do the project in red, we thought we were going to be doing a city engineering designed project from 25th Street to Maple Valley there. So we would have farmed out the box culvert to the bridge at Drain 53, but internally we would have designed that. And likewise on the west side, we would have done the portion in green. We thought we'd be there at this point in time, but as the years have gone by, there really hasn't been any activity down here to drive that. So with federal aid, you can't build a bridge to nowhere like we heard a while ago. You have to have independent utility, meaning you build our project, you still have to get from point A to point B without having to turn around. So we would build from 25th Street going west, but we need to either bring down the frontage road or bring down 45th Street for that independent utility. So that has led to us having to add the design for this contract.
I think Commissioner Strand is just curious why it wasn't rebid, and I think in fairness to the other bidders, that's his question. I think you, Brenda, were explaining that a bit, is that they were picked originally for this project, and you understand that their expertise, you wanted them to continue this project, and again, we don't then waste money as well because they've been looking into it. So I think he's asking, why wouldn't we rebid it?
Well, at this point, the KLJ has the institutional knowledge of what's going on down here with the wetlands, the noise, the historic structures, if there are any, the grading.
So they've actually put some money into it and are into
Well, yeah, the
the project.
preliminary engineering, yeah.
Mr. Strand, any other questions on that?
No, I'm still a little uncomfortable with the whole process. How about legally? Do you have Eric, any advice for us legally about bids or RFPs or in a situation like this?
Sure. So sort of the two areas of law are the public bidding of a public improvement, that's the construction work. And you still have this issue from time to time there where you have a big project, call it $1 million project, whether you think that's big or not. Sounds big to me. But you decide to have a change order that ends up being fairly significant, and we have to address that. There isn't really any specific guidance in the law about when does it become where the amendment swallows the base contract. I mean, it's very possible that it makes a lot of sense for the same reasons we're talking about here to take $1 million contract and just by amendment add something to it, just because it makes sense to add something to it. And again, the people involved have institutional knowledge. Then the second issue ends up being where you have design professionals and other service contracts where you don't even have a public bidding requirement under state law. We have a policy that requires requests for qualifications or proposals. Same issue there, though. There really isn't any bright line test, and so I think you're asking legitimate questions, though. I mean, and we talk about those also. I think there is a potential that somebody would some other person that wanted the work or was interested in the work would say it's not right because you anticipated all this and, you know, it's a subterfuge or something. I've not encountered that during my tenure here, but that's always something that comes to mind, and so it's a fair question to ask. But here, again, the explanation is that it's just a project that developed over time into something different than originally intended, and under a legal framework, it's perfectly permissible to do this by amendment, I think.
Mr. Gehrig.
To John's point, at this one point, there was a delay here. 2015 was the RFP, they got the contract, it changed. Someone made a decision to delay this, and then, I don't know why then we weren't asked, hey, do you guys want to go back for another round of requests, or just move forward with this and do an amendment? Even if they gave us a price, we could say, well, maybe if we do another round of requests, maybe we get a better price. Same company, better price. You know what I mean? So I stay with us with what you're saying. I would have liked to have been more in the loop on all this. I didn't know this was delayed over these years. So even just a little bit more of communication with us, even through liaison if we have to, would have been nice just to say, nope, this process is the way it should be. I agree with you guys. Or maybe one of us felt very strongly that this wasn't the way we should have gone forward and maybe done another round of RFPs. So I'm likely to approve this here, but I think it's a way to show us that maybe the process just internally here could be better to try to get a better deal for the taxpayer.
Any other questions or discussion? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the suggested motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So I have one more question, Mayor. So after the initial RFP, then does it become something akin to a sole source provider or procurer? The expansion
Well, I
aspect
mean, there's
of it?
competition for the original contract.
See, this is where I'm trying to figure out is are we comfortable with the extra $900 and some thousand? Are we comfortable that that's a competitive? I know that there's an estimated percentage amount, but how do we know if that's truly competitive?
I hear you there. At this point, it would be kind of hard to parse what they've done, but we could, if you guys wanted us to break this up and get values for the east and the bridge and the west.
The concern is if you break it up, it may cost you more. What right now is you have a working relationship with a firm, you feel they give you a fair price, and that's going to go happen. I think what the commissioners would just like is, in the future when these things happen, yes, you made a commitment. Ken Koskinen, can you explain to the team just sole source, what that's used for, and what values typically are with sole source? Brenda, you want to make a comment?
I do know I lost my train of thought. I apologize. One of the things I kind of compared what happened to is, we went through a competitive process to select our RFP. Once the RFP, the consultant was selected, then we enter into contract with them. So now we have a contract with that consultant. So in 2015, through the RFP selection process, there was a recommendation, and that's the consultant that we selected to do the work, and we entered into a contract with them. So there's nothing regarding a sole source, but it's that contract that we have.
Yes, commissioners, in your procurement policy that you've approved, recently updated as much as within the past year, there are some sole source provisions in there. But typically a sole source procurement would involve something of a really unique nature or something that is difficult to place in the marketplace, or maybe somebody that has a proprietary type widget, if you will, or a product or service. And that can be sole sourced just based upon an approval of the finance committee. And then I believe that if it's in excess of $50,000, it would come to you for that final approval. So there are times when it can be used, and it's prudent to use them. And right now, the vetting process lands within your finance committee, and ultimately to you for these larger ones. This one, if it had been gone through that path, would ultimately come to you in the end.
So Johnson Controls is a good example. They do the controls for the system throughout our system. So when we get an update or get something that's done, it's hard to have a different vendor do that. So that's sometimes the sole source. Software areas are somewhere we sometimes will do that. I think they're just concerned, and I think, Brenda, you explained that. We do have a contract. We were moving forward. This is really a modification of a contract we previously held. But maybe we can just take this offline and talk to the engineers just about that. And I think to Commissioner Garrick's, sometimes it's just nice to update us what's going on, and we recognize that some things changed since 2015. So, any other discussion?
Just one thing real quick. Brenda, I guess from your perspective, if we decided to just stop this and rebid it and put it back out for bid, more than likely it's going to cost us a lot more money. Wouldn't you say that? I mean, what they have built-in experience with this project. If we do this, if we decided to stop, it would cost more.
Well, and if we step back and said, okay, we're going to keep you at this from frontage road to frontage road, we do another RFP. And they would be steps ahead of all the other consultants because of the environmental work that they've already done. And so we would probably end up with KLJ. And as part of that, because they are ahead than any other of the consultant firms to do the work. So.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. I'll end on this. That would have been my recommendation. And not that it matters all that much, but I would have probably preferred to see another RFP.
Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. We'll go to public hearings. Case Peak and Hall Edition, 1527 Fifth Avenue South. Approval recommended by Planning Commission on 3/5/19. It's a zoning change SR3 to a multi-dwelling residential. First reading of rezoning ordinance. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Crest of the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting the next two items. Your packets for both of these items include a zone change ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office. As the Mayor stated, item 28A is a zone change in the Case, Peak, and Hall Edition, just to locate everybody here. Here is the property. This is Luther Hall, which is owned by Lutheran Social Services. It provides services for youth. They also own this property here. We're down in South Fargo here, 5th Avenue South, 15th Street South. This little corner right here is Jefferson School. This aerial photograph is not quite real time here. That house has been demolished. This is the lot this morning. So this is the vacant lot here. This is Luther Hall. This is the adjacent garage on a separate property. And then that's from 5th Street. And then this is in the back alley, looking back where we just were. And again, we just see that there's a vacant lot there and one deflated basketball back there. The approximately 7,000 acre site is zoned SR3, which is a single dwelling residential zone. The adjacent Luther Hall is zoned MR2, which is a multi-dwelling residential zone. Lutheran Social Services wishes to just zone this to match the rest of their property there. They have indicated to us that they don't intend to build a large MR2 building. They want to build an accessory unit garage, I believe, for their property there. Staff has received a phone call and 2 emails plus a comment letter which was included in your packet. The applicant, Bob Guertin of Lutheran Social Services, is with Mr. Guertin is with us tonight and may wish to address the Commission. Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the Commission?
Good evening. I just wanted to come and present in front of you guys, just to let you know that he is correct. we're at Luther Hall, we own 1505, and we also own 1527. We demolished the house this fall in October, mainly because it was in so much disrepair, it would cost more to get it up and running than to demolish it. When we did that, we also demolished the garage on the property as well. The garage was flooding every spring, things like that. So in order to be able to build another outbuilding, which we want to do a garage, the reason for the garage is to have room for our bikes that we have, mountain bikes, so we can take the kids on bike rides, and other rec equipment for outside. So we're pretty much going to put that garage in the same footprint, give or take a little bit of space from where the other garage was at. I know reading some of the letters and some of the response we got, I know the city sent out letters to people around the neighborhood identifying that we were looking to go from a single dwelling to a multi-dwelling rezoning. And I think a lot of the people in the neighborhood felt that we were trying to maybe build other buildings or things like that. And I just wanted to put people at ease that our plan is just to build a garage. We have no plan for apartment buildings or another building on the property. We're basically going to use the space that you saw in the picture as green space. We did plant grass already, and we're also going to put natural barriers along the west end where the house is, and then hedge on Fifth Avenue, just to blend into the neighborhood a little bit nicer. So again, just wanted to let the commission know that, if I could not change the zoning, I wouldn't just put a garage, but I've been instructed that I can't do that I do have to do a multi-resident. We can't have a garage without a house in a single, dwelling. So that's the reason for making it a multi-dwelling zoning change, and I just want to, again, ease everybody's mind that we have no other plans than just to put up the garage.
Thank you for coming forward. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this rezoning?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I live across the street from the property, and Luther Hall's been a good neighbor. I'm just more worried about if they sell their building. There's no reason if they they get a grant, they get some increase in funding or something else, they move on, and then we're left with 2 other properties that are going to be bought by a developer or somebody else in the future. I know Luther Hall probably doesn't have plans for that property, but somebody else might. And if there's some other kind of variance they can get in order to build their garage and leave the property as is, I'd be for that. But as far as moving it up to a multifamily residence zoning, increases the footprint size of a future apartment building 5, 10, 20 years from now, whenever Luther Hall moves on. That's my main concern. So Luther might not have the plans for it. Property owner in the future might.
Please just give your name as well.
Randy Engelstad.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? We'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval, and then I have a question for Donald.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Donald, he has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Any comment on a different approach to this? I think we had that vetted at the Planning Commission, if I
Yes, sir, I believe we did, that this would be considered a unified development so that all the zoning should be similar, or should be the same on a project like that.
So there wouldn't be a variance you could get to put a garage on the site if it was single family, because there'd be no house with it. So you're just following land code?
Yes, sir, I'd say that's a good interpretation.
Commissioner Gary?
You guys have danced around it, and I may have missed it. They can't build a garage there currently with this zoning of any kind?
Again, that would be considered a unified development. All the zoning should be the same on that to make that work.
No, let's say that the zoning didn't change. You're not allowed to build a garage on that property without a
That
house.
would be it'd be an accessory building without a primary building on that garage.
And that's not legal?
No, sir.
Correct. Okay. That was my main concern. So if, to Randy's concern, if this does get changed and they do decide that they want to build a small apartment building on top of it, do they get that by right then with this zoning, or do they have to come back here to get that approved?
Well, if it's an MR3 zone, whatever is allowed by right, or an MR2 zone, pardon me, sir, whatever is allowed by right, you can build there, although they would be limited by the size that they could build there because of the small area of the lot. Because you only get a percentage of that total. So MR2 is 20 dwelling units per acre. This is 7,000 square feet, so that's, you know, whatever fraction of an acre that is, 1/6 of an acre, which wouldn't be a very big apartment building, be a sixth of 20.
I just point that out to say that his concern is valid.
Yes, sir.
You know, that there is concern in the neighborhood that for that to happen. I am for the rezoning because they can't build what they want without the rezoning, so it's kind of, you're trusting your neighbor a little bit, and that's what we need to do, so.
And Luther's had a long relationship with us. They're telling us that's what they can do. Concern as well as could sell later, but that is what they'd be allowed to do now. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Donald. I'm just curious if, I know there's a Jefferson neighborhood overlay.
Yes, sir.
Is this, I'm believing, part of that overlay?
Not the historic one.
Not the historic overlay, so it's not in that neighborhood?
It's in the Jefferson neighborhood, but there's a historic part and a non-historic part.
How do we know?
Commissioner, let me just, that's a recent overlay, I just wanted to double check.
It is recent. How do we know the garage they build will fit the neighborhood?
Pardon me?
How do we know the garage they build will fit the neighborhood? Or are there any, we may be surprised. I'm not expecting it, but how do we know we're not surprised by what you build? People go, their jaw drops and go, wow, that's not what we envisioned.
I'll answer the question this way, and perhaps Mr. Gretton can help us out there. We were under the impression that this is going to be a storage area, as I think for bikes and other things for the students or the residents there, which would probably not be a very large building. You know, it wouldn't be like a building the full width of the lot and the full depth of the lot and a concrete, you know, massive, like a truck garage type of thing, like you might see on a trucking company. That's what our impression was. I don't know. That's Mr. Garrett. Do you have any more on that? Or?
You're correct, yeah, we're a standard 2-car garage, just with the peaked roof, everything like that, so it wouldn't be something, it wouldn't be a huge garage, it would just be a double-star garage, enough to put our bikes and maybe one of our vans in when it gets cold. That's what we're looking for, cement slab.
And Commissioner, this, we're looking here from 5th Street, I don't know if you can see this here. This garage actually is across the alley, but that's probably, I think that is a double back there, just kind of your standard double-sized garage. And this is a single garage right here adjacent to this. It matches the older property here. And then there's some other garages along the alley, back down that alley. So it would seemingly be similar to the other garages on the alley there, sir.
Mr. Gehrig?
But they could build a monster one with this zoning. I mean, I know what they're saying, I know, and I believe you, but they're not gonna own it forever, to Randy's point. They could build something big on this.
I suppose they could, sir, yes.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes, sir. That's understandable.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 28B, Eagle Valley, 3rd Edition, 7301 23rd Street South. Approval recommended by Planning Commission 2519. Zoning change from multi-dwelling residential to a multi-dwelling residential and SR4, single dwelling. It's an MR2, first reading and rezoning ordinance. And it's a plat of the Eagle Valley 3rd Edition. Donald LaCrest as well.
Yes, sir, Commissioners. So this, as the mayor stated, is the Eagle Valley 3rd Edition. Some location here. This is the property. This is 25th Street, 73rd Avenue South. This is Davies High School. This is Park District owned property, and this is 76th Avenue South down here. And out there today, it's vacant, as you see. Just some views here from 73rd and 25th here, 76th and 25th. That's Davies High School in the background there. And then here we're looking two views along the east edge of this property. Here's north from 76th and south from 73rd. This is the approximate alignment of future 23rd Avenue South. The zoning here is MR2. The requested zoning is a little different here. Usually you're stepping the zoning up to be of greater density. Here they're stepping it down to be of less density, which we'll look at in a minute here when we get to the plat. The plat will create 29 lots. 28 of them will actually be zoned to SR4, which is a single-family zone. This lot in the corner, Block 9, will be, we are going to rezone it from MR2 to MR2. That is, we're going to keep the MR2 existing zoning. And to touch on my discussion with Commissioner Gehrig a moment ago, so this This lot is 3/4 of an acre, it's 0.76 acre. So since the MR2 zone would allow a maximum of 20 units, here they would be allowed to have a maximum of 15 units because it's 3/4 of 20. And then these, again, are all intended for detached single-family residences here. We'll note that these lots here are double fronting. That is, they touch both the internal street here, which the applicant will be building, and the existing outside street. And so when we have this situation, we do have a requirement that appears in the amenities plan and other documents that the property owner has certain responsibilities for the streets that they don't face. That is, the houses on this internal street here will face this way, but their backyards will be back here. They have a responsibility for mowing and snow removal on the sidewalk on 73rd and for mowing the boulevard on 25th Street. That is an arterial, so the city blows the snow and plows the snow off the sidewalk. But that is a requirement that they will have for that. Staff has received one phone call regarding that from the neighboring property owner that just was wondering what's going to get built there. No opposition to that. The applicant, John Eunice of Eagle Ridge Development, is with us tonight, may wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated on the screen and shown in your staff report. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak this rezoning? Anybody wish to speak? We'll close the hearing, the public part.
Donald, can you go back to your first slide with the pictures you took today?
Yes, sir.
Just curious, the sandbags around there, were those filled by Mayor Mahoney?
I did not investigate that detail, sir. But there is a lot of water in there. There's some nice cattails out there. It's
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grunberg.
Aye.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item 30, recommendation to direct city attorney and appropriate staff to draft developmental agreement and financial plan for parking garage at Mercantile site, northeast corner of Broadway and 4th Avenue North. Jim Gilmore to explain.
This, we need additional parking downtown. We have, at this point, we have waiting lists for our existing facilities. There's tenants looking at moving into the downtown that we're unable to provide parking for. Places like Gate City Bank have been adding staff, and we don't have additional parking for those. And so what we're looking at is creating a new parking garage where the Mercantile name comes from the Mercantile building that was once located on the corner of 4th Avenue and Broadway. So that's where we kind of came up with a name for this particular development. Several years ago, we did some studies on where we could have good locations for parking ramps in the downtown. The two sites were identified. One was where Roberts Commons was built, and the other was this particular site. As we look at parking studies in our downtown plan, the demand for parking is in this area north of 2nd Avenue, more so than any other area in the downtown. Kilbourne Group owns the property on this corner, and they are willing to work with the city of Fargo to build another mixed-use development similar to Roberts Commons. I have some images of that I'll go through here. The parking garage would be approximately 370 spaces. There'd be that the city would own. There'd be a private building attached, much like Roberts Commons, so the parking ramp would only be visible as you drove around from 5th Street where the entrance would be. The concept right now is for approximately 370 parking spaces. The private building that would be developed by Kilbourne Group would have approximately 100 apartment units, and there'd be main floor commercial space. This is shows it image from Broadway. You can see we'd be looking at about roughly a 6-story building, private building. The ramp would be 6 to 7 stories, similar in height to both the Roberts Commons garage and the Block 9 garage that's under construction now. The entrances would be off of 5th Street North. There'd be a common stair tower and elevator at that corner that would serve both the parking facility as well as the apartment building. This is kind of the layout. It shows you the retail sites along 4th Avenue and Broadway to try to have businesses there that would kind of activate that use for those corners. The parking garage would be set back a little bit from that. And then adjacent to the Island Park Cycles, there'd be housing on the north side of that building. This would be the upper floors, would be all apartments and housing, and then the top of the parking garage would sit up a little bit higher than the rest of that private building. We anticipate we could probably rent out more than 400 parking spots, but in terms of this particular site, that would get it probably either too high or too crowded from the primary the development. So the recommendation now is we'd have to spend some more time now. One would be to work with the city attorney to draft a development agreement. The agreement would be similar to Roberts Commons. Eric's worked on that in the past, and so that could be done. The other would be to work with our finance department to come up with a financing plan for how we would borrow money to build the facility and have a financial plan to pay those bonds back. Be happy to answer any question. The recommended motion is to move forward with a development agreement and develop a financing plan for this facility.
Mr. Gehrig?
How much is it going to cost?
The construction cost is estimated at about $11 million. That's about $30,000 a parking spot, which is similar to what we paid in ROCO. We would have to buy the land. We haven't negotiated that price yet, and then there could be some additional costs, certainly beyond that, as far as professional services to monitor the project, bonding costs, et cetera.
Will it make money?
From operations, I mean, it will probably generate about $450,000 a year in income. It'll cost $200,000 to operate it, and so it will not make sufficient money to pay off the debt that will be required for that facility. You know, the debt for Roberts Commons is about $750,000 a year. That was for $10 million. This would be something more than that, since we anticipate this would be $11 to $12 million in debt.
So the cost per year to own this and operate it would be, with debt services, would be somewhere around $1 million. Through the rental of the spaces, we're talking about $400,000 or $500,000 in revenue. How much would the TIF bring in per year if that was placed on top?
We have the tax increment financing district on this particular block is we anticipate if there's a $15 million in development, there'd be $200,000 a year in tax increment financing money that would come in. The other factor is we look at our overall parking system. As these buildings are completed at ROCO, we will start to receive about $500,000 a year in TIF revenue. Right now, we're using the revenue from the rest of our parking facilities to pay the debt at ROCO until the TIF money comes in. So as the overall TIF money increases, we're in better shape to pay the annual debt service for this particular ramp.
So I'm just doing the math. We'd be about $300,000 in debt per year because of this building. So $1 million, taking about $500,000 a year. TIF might bring in $200,000, $700,000 in revenue, $100 million in debt. So this will not make money for the city of Fargo for the foreseeable future. And as this building ages, it will cost money to repair, as we know. So my biggest question that goes through my head is that we did a market analysis of some kind. We saw there was a demand for more parking that would help the downtown. So why wouldn't the private sector step in and then provide that parking? It's because it doesn't make any money. Even if it would help the business around there, many of them owned by Kilbourne, they wouldn't make enough money. So of course the government is meant to come forth and spend the money and lose the money every single year in order to make up that difference. It's the same story we've heard over and over again. ROCO is the same way. We're going to keep building these things. We're going to keep losing money with the anticipation that someday it'll pay itself off, which it rarely has done. I can't think of an example where the parking ramp has done that so far. We have a parking ramp that has a TIF on it currently that's been on the books for 40 years, our longest TIF, and we're leaving on the books indefinitely, which is not good. So again, I will vote no. I want people of Fargo to know why I'm voting no. It's because we'll lose money. If there's a market demand for it, the private sector will fill that demand. And I think we're leaning way too far over our skis, and we're going to fall at some point, which is why I think we should stop doing these things and wait for the market to catch up a little bit.
Any other comments? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Jim, help me understand, who will own this ramp
The city of Fargo would own it,
entirely?
yes. Some of our parking facilities now, the ones that are paid for, that don't have debt, do make money. The revenue exceeds the annual cost. In addition, we put some money in for future repairs, and it's been that revenue that's paying for the debt on Roberts Commons until the TIF money comes in on that. So these facilities have lives of probably well over 50 years. The maximum the TIF can go is 25, so that's probably the maximum we would bond for. So once they're paid for, they do pay for themselves in addition to helping pay for new facilities.
Commissioner Gurk.
Remind me though, we did have a parking ramp in the US Bank where Block 9 is going basically in the past. It was there for I think 40 years and it never paid for itself ever, and they got in such disrepair that we just tore it down, and that's why there was a parking lot there for so long. So while we can point to other ramps that may be making money now over a 40-year life, that's quite the risk, especially considering that we do have examples in the past where they have failed. The city lost a bunch of money doing it, then we had to offer incentives to others to build back up that area, like Block 9 with their massive incentives. So again, we're taking a huge risk with not a whole lot of upside, especially considering that we're losing $300,000 a year for the foreseeable future. I don't know an investor in this city that you'd come to that investor and say, hey, this project's really great. In 30 years, you'll be making a lot of money, but for the first 30 years, you're going to lose $300,000 a year. No one would ever do that. And no one would ever build this project, for example, unless they're going to make 8% revenue, 12% revenue, 15% revenue year one. That's why we offer incentives. So I'm just saying we're making bad investments compared to what the market is saying that they would accept. And I think it's a pretty dramatic difference.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, so part of it is we're very fortunate because we have the ROCO to show what this is basically going to be very similar to that same type of model. And part of our job is to have vision and look what's going on. With ROCO, if you look what's going on there, before we had a flat parking lot. I don't know what the number was exactly for the property tax, but it was minimal. And now if you look what's there, it's phenomenal. And so that's what we're going to replicate again. One of the tricks to being good is copy the good stuff and eliminate the dumb stuff, and we'll do pretty well. To me, ROCO, it's packed. If you go there on the weekends, you can't find a parking spot. What a great thing. And if you look at the businesses on the first floor, including the alley, that's fantastic. So part of it is you got to have a little bit of vision, and in our downtown it's amazing. If you drive down there, especially today, the steel's going up on Block 9. People are going, holy crap, that thing's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. Our downtown is booming, and that's what we want. And this is part of what the city government does, is we have vision, and this is part of the process. So thank you. That's my comments.
Just Gary.
How much does ROCO lose a year?
Our revenue is around $650,000, and our expenses are around $250 to $300. So we're making on operations, $350. The annual debt service is about $750.
So we're losing $300,000, $400,000 a year.
And until the TIF starts in 5 years, then it'll be break even.
But Mr. Chair, look at what's there versus what was there. You got to look at more than just, you got to look further than the end of your nose. Look at what was there, a flat parking lot, to what's there now. That's what you got to do. That's part of our job. And one more comment, to think, you know what, this will all just happen. The downtown, it'll all just happen. We've been around 25 years. Is that what was happening? And it's still there. The flat parking lots and no development, that's what was happening. It's not just going to happen. We have to, that's part of our job, to have vision for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you. Jim, I'm assuming in this recommended motion, when we ask staff to create a draft, a development agreement and financing plan, that has to come back to this commission?
Certainly.
So whatever that is, we will have to vet that? It won't, like, this doesn't prejudice that to
Right, the
have to
development
happen?
agreement will come back to you. The tax increment financing district for the site is already in place, but the development agreement would have to come back to you.
And if I can ask the dumbest question of the night, how about people who say you don't need more parking ramps in the future with the evolving technology and transit, smart cars and autonomous vehicles? Just to answer that question, because I know there's people out there that say you shouldn't be building any more parking ramps.
We don't know where that technology will be for sure, but I think if there is a technology and people start using cars less, you may see the surface lots close first. Even if we have a lot of autonomous vehicles, there's going to need to park them somewhere at night, and I think these are going to be probably the ideal locations for them. Also, I saw an article yesterday about the millennials and their likelihood to own cars, and this report was that there are only 1% less car ownership in millennials than there are from the rest of the public, and so the idea that everyone's giving up their car isn't the truth.
It's a good question, John. Governor believes that, so 10 years, he said, so. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further
I
discussion?
have a comment. Just
Commissioner Grinberg.
when we come back for the presentation of the financial plan, I would recommend we have kind of a comprehensive look of our other parking revenue and expenses, so we see the holistic parking picture for downtown and why we consider, what's coming forth.
I think one of the concerns is we've lost some businesses downtown that have needed parking lots, and we've had quite a few of the businesses say they would expand if they had more parking, so it does set up a dilemma. I think the parking commissioner, you guys go over this. I concur with Grinberg. It'd be nice to see that presentation. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Gehrig?
No.
Strand? Mahoney?
Aye. Next, go to flood update. I want to thank all the city workers that helped out with the sandbagging. I think Ben's crew had been working since January on clearing the roads of snow, ice, everything else that accumulated. They probably had a great weekend this weekend because they finally had a weekend off, but they were working all weekend. Eventually they'll get a weekend off, right, Ben? And the fire department was fun because they had guys who'd never had to do the sandbagging effort. So you guys were out there, did a great job, and kept us with wire tires, and that was fantastic. But the effort done out on our sandbagging was fantastic. We set some goals, we hit those goals, and I think we could be proud as a city. We were ready for 41 if 41 came. The turn down of the flood has been fantastic. We're perfect flood. We're going to be somewhere about 35, I think. I think I'll get to take my vest off tomorrow because we're not quite at the final number. But I'm very pleased. Denny made me wear this thing for 30 days, so I'm pleased that maybe we can be much less than that, Nathan. But just want to thank the whole community because I gave a lecture at Harvard and I was talking about the 209 flood. And one of the questions asked is, how did you ever survive that? And we had over 100,000 volunteers. And people from all over the country were at that meeting, and they couldn't believe that we could get 100,000 volunteers come out and help us. But that's truly what makes a difference in the flood fight, and all of us know that. It's that our community stands up and takes, does the things it has to do. But I want to just especially thank the city staff that worked so hard on this and the time spent on it, and our people do a great job. So I want to put that out there, and I think all the commissioners would agree with that. So Bruce, go ahead. Don't want to take your thunder, but
Mayor, you stole my intro, so I could have stayed seated. But no, this is going to be a very brief flood update tonight, and it will likely be our last flood update. So that's really good news that it appears we're cresting at just over 35 feet right now. You recall last Wednesday we called a special meeting because at that time the deterministic forecast was saying somewhere 34 to 36, rain in the forecast. So we asked for approval to tend to 5 lower lying areas that are affected at those elevations. And so you gave us approval to do that. We buttoned those up last Thursday and Friday, including we installed some removable flood panels for the first time in our history, which was kind of an interesting process. So tonight, Nate's just got a few slides, some great aerial photos to show you just real quickly, and then also asked Chief Dirksen showing off some new capabilities we have with drone video footage. So I hope you enjoy it. Take it away, Nate.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, as Bruce mentioned, we are currently cresting at 35 feet. Right now, they're showing kind of a long, drawn out lowering of the river levels. Hopefully, it goes a little bit quicker than that, but it's great to see the crest. Here's the graph I showed you guys previously of all the previous floods that the city of Fargo has seen. Now we've added in the light blue, kind of thicker line right in the middle, how this rise of the river looks like in comparison to other previous floods. As you can see, it is actually falling very close to the 1989 flood. That's the pink one that's basically right on top of it. So we are looking at a top 10 crest, though, in the history of Fargo, so it's still a rather significant flood event. Here are just a couple quick aerial photos that Vern Witten took from yesterday in regards to downtown and us not having to put our emergency clay levee down here anymore. So as everybody probably remembers from 2009, if we would have taken the same photo, we would have had a clay levee basically right to the right-hand side of where the flood wall is situated today.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question? So what was that clay levee, like the ballpark, how much did that cost when we had to construct that?
I don't know how much it cost, but it was right around 25,000 cubic yards of clay we needed to put on that, and that would have taken roughly 2,500 different truck trips to get down here. So it was rather costly endeavor. So yeah, here is downtown 2nd Street North flood wall. We have water up against it. It is performing as expected. Here is more in the Park East, high-rise 4th Street levee area. You can see in the upper hand right is area that is currently under construction to complete that last project in downtown here. They'll install the removable flood wall across 2nd Street, which will eliminate the need for the trap bags that we installed last week. You can also see the high-rise area where we have the flood wall that was constructed a few years ago. Luckily, there's no water up against that. And then, of course, the 4th Street levee that's been here since 1960 and still performing as we expect.
So it looks like Moorhead's got some water and houses over there, or what's that about?
I am not sure what Moorhead's protection plans are over there or what those buildings even are. Here's just the last one, that an area where we reconstructed the levee that was actually having issues back in 2014-15 timeframe. Reconstructed this flood wall, and this is the first time this is an area that has seen water as well, but is again performing as expected. With that, I'll turn it over to the chief to have the drone video.
Throughout this whole process, there's been a lot of collaboration. If you remember back in November last year, you approved the creation of a unmanned aerial systems team, which involves the Fargo Fire Department, the West Fargo Fire Department, Fargo PD, West Fargo PD, and Cass County Sheriff's Office. This has been a great training experience for our folks over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of great video. We're working with engineering over the last number of weeks. Did some early flights and found some areas that needed to be fixed, and some places where people were storing equipment and materials where they probably shouldn't be. That could have been a problem if we would have had a larger flood event. So getting out early, taking some of that video footage and alleviating some of those issues along the way. Our pilots have become very skilled through this process. A lot of things that you can see, we can deploy this thing rather quickly. We did a test last week, still working through some issues, but they called me and said, hey, we're testing this. Go to your computer. I flipped on the computer, clicked on a link, and I was watching them fly live over the city of Fargo. So as we get that dialed in a little bit better, in the future we'll be able to use these things and provide you folks with a link. And you'll be able to see live what's going on, what they're flying, what we're seeing. We're able to fly for about 20 minutes at a time. and then they'll have to bring it back, change the battery, and then put it back up. But this was over the course of this morning that this was taken. This is a lot faster. We sped up the video because we didn't want to take 20 minutes of your time. So Chief Todd should be getting his radar gun out there with some of these folks. But what you can see is just the great capability and the fine, the mayor alluded to the folks that work for the city. These folks, 2 years ago had no idea. They might have been flying a drone, or I should say UAS, drone is the wrong term. A UAS on their own, but now the level and skill that they've developed over the last 2 years to be able to produce videos like this and provide a tool. Just read an article over the weekend how New York City is actually implementing drone usage with their fire department and how they're flying it in downtown Manhattan and getting overviews and things like that. So just a quick little snip there of what you guys, what your employees are out and what they're doing. So that's it. You're just rewatching the same video.
Chief, do you have a ground observer when you're doing this?
What was that?
Require a ground observer when they're doing that?
Yes, yeah, we're still required a ground observer and a pilot. We're working through all the variances and everything that we need there.
Seems like you covered a lot of ground there for a ground observer.
Yeah, well, it's sped up. You can watch quite a ways, so.
Commissioner Chan.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Nathan, if you would be answering this or whom, but we've had some houses that are in the risk zones that we're talking about, the Kesselring House, the Stern House, and maybe some others. How are those properties affecting our flood protection now, or how are they impacted, or what's the status of those properties?
Yeah, so those properties, luckily with the 35-foot crest, did not require any emergency measures. But when we were talking about those higher levels here a week or so ago, they would have required emergency measures to be placed behind those homes. And we had contingency plans, if needed, to put them on the wrong side of our primary line of protection, make sure that we protect our infrastructure. So they are still homes that we need to go forward with and acquire. And engineering is discussing today, what's the timing of starting to pursue those a little bit further and maybe updating some of the appraisals now that those appraisals are a few years old.
And if I might, remind me, the 35-foot level through town roughly now, that's the original Plan A diversion level before they raised it to 37 feet?
That is correct.
Is that correct? Yes. So if the diversion, if and when it's in place, and sounds like the news is there today, when the diversion's in place, we would still have up to 2 more feet through town.
Correct.
But we'd be protected for that.
Yes, that is, we are moving forward with implementing all the projects so we can safely pass 37 feet through town with sufficient freeboard with no emergency measures.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's our update. As I mentioned at the public meeting this morning, I hope we don't see you next spring.
There's a Board of Equalization meeting tomorrow at 7:30, just so if the public wants to come forth to that. That's a time in which you get Ben Hushka gives our update and tells us what's going on. Thanks to everybody for everything going on. And I don't know, Dave, do you owe me another steak now? I can't remember.
No, you can only lose a bet once.
Well, I thought I was like this, the magic 4 coming up here, the final 4 where you've done so well.
I move to adjourn.
I have a.
Objection.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dwayne Hanson here was supposed to speak at your hearing because of issues with city council and city employees.
I have no request, but if you want to speak, go ahead. You'd go over to that podium and talk to the mic so the public could hear you.
Yeah, we've had a theft of a semi-trailer out of Wallworks parking lot type of a deal. That was back in July, and the staff of the Fargo PD refuses to do their job. I think they have a pretty good idea where the trailer is, but they don't want to come forth with any information. I believe that Wallworks staff, or some of the people on Wallworks staff and some of the people on the Fargo Police Department, there's a theft ring going on here, and it's quite serious. The police chief won't talk to me. The lieutenants won't talk to me. I've got documentation of changing of reports, because I had picked up reports at different times and they change. And I've been to talk to some of your staff, some of the commissioners here, and they referred me over to the mayor. And the mayor, he talked to me a little bit, but he refuses to talk to me anymore. As I understand it, Mayor, you're in charge of it's on your portfolio. You're in charge, overseer of the Fargo Police Department. I mean, there's corruption there, real corruption going on. Like I said, I think there's a theft ring here. Any questions?
We have heard your complaints. The police department has adequately addressed them over and over again. You don't seem to understand. Your trailer was stolen. It is on a report that goes out nationally. The police have done everything they can do for it. The trailer's not in the region or not in the area as far as we're concerned. And my police department would never steal anything or be part of any theft ring. So you've had your opportunity to speak to the commission. If you want to take it up a different way with the legal or whatever, you're welcome to do that. But we have no reason to believe what you're accusing us of has any truth to it at all.
Well, I've been to the governor, and some of his staff told me how to report this or go about this, and I'm going along those lines, and you people are way out of line, and there's theft going on here, and like I said, I believe there's some of the people inside the law enforcement, Fargo Police Department, that are part of this theft ring, along with some of the people over at Wallworks and Fargo. And it doesn't take but a trailer a year or a vehicle, not a year, a trailer a month or a vehicle a month for them to convert it over to real cash. And probably some people are getting a kickback on it, and it may be you.
There's nothing like that going on here, sir, and you're off now. You're done, and you're not going to address this again. If you want to do anything else, pursue a legal course. But what you say is totally false. There's no truth to what you said here today, other than your trailer is gone. We have no idea who took it. So best of luck with that. Please do not harass my staff. You came into my office and harassed my secretary staff. That was improper. You at times have to have a police escort because we're never sure what your behavior will be. And I will just tell you, pursue some other legal things, but this is absolutely false.
That's because I tell the truth and you lie.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, 2 weeks ago, prior to our meeting, I met a dear lady out in the lobby, and she had her property tax statement, and she was very nervous and wanted to talk to somebody about her valuation increase. She did not want to come into the room because of being a little intimidated. I brought her in, introduced her to Ben Hushka, and they traded information. Tonight she was standing back in the lobby just complimenting the city staff and the effort to introduce her to the right person to address her concern. And so to your point earlier about the great staff that we have, I just want to thank Ben in his role. I don't think Ben is here, but all of you are doing a great job. And so I want to end on that note that we made a difference in a citizen's life just by her coming in and making a difference. So.
Thank you.
I got one last thing too.
Just Garrett.
John Strand's birthday, was it yesterday or the day before?
It just happened.
Happy birthday, John.
Saturday.
I expected you to sing.
Happy birthday, John. Motion adjourned.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks.